Hashtag Doggy People with Phil Lassman.
Hello, it's me, and welcome to Hashtag Doggy People, the show about life, love, and dogs. Now, this week I've got a really big surprise for you because we're going to be meeting the Madonna of animal welfare. She's the founder and one of the world's most famous and best loved animal charity people. What is that charity? It can only be Animals Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Jill Robinson. MBE. Hello, Jill. How are you?
Hello, lovely. How are you? Good to be here.
Gosh, I'm zooming with a superstar. That's what you are.
I wish I had my dogs here or something. They're the real heroes, but no, they would ruin the whole show. Believe me. So.
No, I know that. I know they would be climbing everywhere, wouldn't they? Well, these are my doggies here, back here, little token dogs. You're speaking to us today from Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Is that right? So it's 7 o'clock in the evening there.
It is.
It's about 7 o'clock. Do you? Can I ask you? Do you live full time in Hong Kong?
Well, since February, yes.
Since February, yeah, because you're in lockdown. Are you in lockdown there now at the moment?
Yeah. I've been trying to get to China and Vietnam to be with our team and our bears, all these months, but haven't been successful. So it's going to be a while yet, I think, which is, everyone's fine. That's the main thing. We've had no problems with COVID, thank goodness, here in China or Vietnam. But gosh, I miss them so much. I can't tell you. I ache. Miss them.
So you've got a flat in Hong Kong, is that
yeah,
right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
In my research, I know that you moved there sort of in the mid-80s.
Yeah.
Is that right? Do you know something? From 1980 to 1985, I lived in Hong Kong. I did.
Right.
I was in Hong Kong for 5 years, not all full time, but I spent about 3 or 4 months of the year there. Do you know what? We could have just missed each other by that much. I had a flat in the Grand Tower Hotel on Nathan Road. And the reason I was there, because every morning after breakfast, about 100 people would come in and show me ladies' knickers. Seriously, for 30 years, I was a ladies' underwear manufacturer. Yeah, I know, it's nuts. I was over there during in the late 70s. We were pioneering the 3-pair pack that you see everywhere now. But anyway, listen, yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is how you start an interview with a global animal welfare icon. I'd like to actually begin by asking you, where actually were you born, and where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Newark in Nottingham. I literally, I think, was only there for days. I think I was born in an RAF camp. And my dad was very nomadic, so I don't know Nottingham at all, to my shame. But then I grew up in Enfield in Middlesex and went to the local comprehensive school and then got a job in London at the BBC for about 5 years and then went on to Thames Television for another 5 before I came out here to Hong Kong. We
had no idea that you did that. What actually was your job at the BBC in Thames?
I'd always loved writing and I wanted to get into research, especially when I moved to Thames Television, and I just loved it. There was a programme called Reporting London with Mike Barrett, and he was so nice. And my ex-boss, Jonathan Silver, he was lovely too. I've still got such fond memories of those days. I met someone that was an airline pilot and then came out to Hong Kong as he came out to work with Cathay Pacific. So It was quite a win thing.
Oh wow, Cathay Pacific, that's a name from boss. That's who used to carry me over to Hong Kong. Did you get married to the airline pilot?
We were together for about 20 years here, and bless him, he was so supportive, and he was chairman of our board up till a couple of years ago. We split in, I think, 2004, but we remained really, really good friends ever since.
I've got the same relationship with my ex-wife. I was married before I met the lovely Ira, and I was married for 13 years to Elaine. And I'll tell you what, it's a situation I've got, because Ira and Elaine, they're like that. They're really good friends. When did you first discover your unbelievable love for animals?
Oh gosh, before I could say the word animal, that's really easy. My mum died when I was a baby, and my dad brought my sister and I up, for a couple of years until we moved in with my auntie and an uncle, so my dad's brother. And I always remember my auntie, she'd say that if ever, she'd have to keep me on reins because if ever I saw a dog or a cat across the road, I would literally just go flying across the road to go over and stroke those animals. I would throw dolls out of the pram, and I only wanted teddy bears. So there's just things like that it just makes sense, to where I am today, I think.
It's so interesting. That's a common thread, I think, with really outstanding animal people. If I could say about Ira, I mean, for her from a baby, she wasn't interested in playing with anything, only animals. She even went to a fair once and brought a donkey home and put it in her back garden. When did you first make that major decision that was going to influence the rest of your life, to actually go full time into animal welfare?
It was a path, I have to say honestly. It was just something that evolved during the time that I was here in Hong Kong. Very quickly, actually. It was a few months after we arrived in Hong Kong, and we were in a place on Clearwater Bay, and on the beach. And as I looked over to the beach, there was a guy walking his cat on the beach. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. I'll pop over and say hello, meet the neighbours. And it turned out he was the Asia rep for the International Fund for Animal Welfare. And I just said to him, gosh, I used to support IFOR when I was, back in the UK, and do fundraising and things for them. So if ever you need anyone to help you on a volunteer basis, I'd love to do that. And as it happened, he did. And his name was David Dawson, and he's still my great mate, together with his wife Alex. They've moved back to the UK since. When he left, I took over his role, and that, as they say, is history. And I worked for them for nearly 12 years, and I was doing a lot of undercover work and at live animal markets, and in Korea and the Philippines and China. Until that fateful day that I walked onto a bear bar farm.
If you hadn't fallen in love with animals, what else would you have done?
I would have stayed in television because I did love it. I like the industry, behind the scenes, not in front of the camera. As I say, I love the research side. I used to, if you remember a program called Good Afternoon, I helped them a couple of times with some research projects, and I really loved it. I just love getting involved with that.
I think there was a higher calling for you, Jill. Everyone who loves animals knows about Animals Asia, especially the unique sanctuary that you provide for dogs, cats, and especially, of course, the beautiful stoic moon bears, which is almost synonymous with you. If it wasn't for you, Jill, I don't think any of us in the Western world would actually have had an inkling as to the terrifyingly cruel practice of bear bile farming. Could you, Jill, please explain to our audience exactly the nature of bear bile farming?
It's something that still to this day I find difficult to come to terms with, because as you're describing it, it's almost, you're talking about a story like out of the National Enquirer, that's something that couldn't possibly be true. But it is true in all its horrible glory. And I think that's the most insidious part of bear bar farming, that it is so cruel that people are just astonished when they hear about it, and you have to almost repeat your story 10 times. But it began in the late 1980s, or in the early 1980s in China, where a technique was learned from North Korea for keeping bears in tiny wire cages and surgically mutilating them to put a metal catheter or a latex catheter through their abdomens and into their gallbladder, so that their bile could be taken on a daily basis for use in traditional medicine. Before that time, bears had been slaughtered in the wild for their whole gallbladders. And, at least to their credit, I guess, China realised that this wasn't a sustainable industry, that bears were being killed left, right and centre for their whole gallbladders. And so they thought that by keeping bears in tiny wire cages, they could, keep the bears alive and milk them of their bile. But I don't think anyone then considered, the suffering that the bears would obviously be undergoing from this surgery. And also, some of the other practices that the farmers would be carrying out to make the bears less dangerous while they were being milked of their bile. So with their, teeth often cut back and their paw tips cut back, literally to, take away their defences and make them less dangerous to milk. This is a practice that went on into other countries, into Vietnam, where the method of bile extraction was different, and where bears were drugged with an illegal drug called ketamine to anaesthetise them. And then their gallbladder was sourced via an ultrasound, believe it or not. So once the operator found that they thought they'd sourced the gallbladder, they would then get a 6-inch spinal needle and put that through into the abdomen and keep going through, taking the needle out of the sheath and licking it until they were certain they'd reached the bitter tasting bile. And once they're sure of that, they put the needle back in and they pump out 100 ml or so of bile into a bottle. And that's how it was practiced in Vietnam. So there's various techniques, you know, in Asia for bear farming, and about 10,000 bears are caught up in this terrible industry. But I have to say the good news in Vietnam is that now it's totally illegal, and we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the Vietnam government to end it totally by the year 2022. So we're on our way. There's only about over 400 bears left in the country. We're desperately looking to build another sanctuary in Vietnam next year so that we can wrap this whole industry up in Vietnam and move on.
Can you explain to us what the beep-boop hell bear bile is used for exactly?
It's termed as a cold medicine to treat heat-related illnesses like high fevers and temperatures, red and sore eyes, anything that's inflamed. That's what bear bile is used for. It's been used in pharmacopoeia, bear bile, for about 2,000 or 3,000 years. And how did doctors then know that it was efficacious? Because the strange thing is that, thousands of years later, we know that bear bile contains a very essential acid called ursodeoxycholic acid, or UDCA, which really does have efficacious effects. So, there was obviously something in it, but the whole point is that bear bile can easily and cheaply be replaced. So you don't need a bear. You've got 54 different herbal alternatives in China, you've got 32 herbal alternatives in Vietnam, and you've got a synthetic UDCA as well, which is produced chemically in a lab without using bile. So the whole thing, is almost redundant, because you don't need the bears to perform that, medical ability.
Nothing is worth the life of a beautiful stoic bear. No one's championed and fought so hard for the moon bear as you. What's been the worst experience that you've encountered in this endeavour?
That's a difficult one, Phil, because there's, it's peppered with frustrations, I think, because, things sometimes move very slowly when you're working in this neck of the woods in Asia. And you can't hurry things in the East, as I'm sure you've heard.
Yes.
The saying, or it's quite true as well. But then, on the other hand, we've seen again so many successes too, and I think that's again tantamount, to our patients as well. Just building up the relationships frustratingly slowly over the years, but then make you realise you come to the point today where you're seeing great progress being made at so many levels on animal welfare in China and Vietnam. I mean, fantastic stuff that's happening. I always say that in China there was one animal welfare group when I came over here in the 80s, and now there's over 200 groups.
And it's so encouraging for everyone to hear that the situation is actually improving. We're going forward, not going backwards. Coming back to what you were talking about, the sanctuary in Vietnam. Now, I know you started that. Tell us, how did you pull that one off?
Oh, well, again, just building up relationships with the Vietnam government. We have to have partners, of course, at an authoritarian level in both China and Vietnam. So government officials are extremely important. So from day one, we had the Vietnam authorities over to China where we first started, seeing our sanctuary there and just talking to them about the possibility of doing the same in Vietnam. And then we came across the most amazing man called Tuan Bendixson, who since has turned out to be our Vietnam director. And he really, started just diving in. He's obviously Vietnamese by birth, but he's also very westernized because he lived in Australia for 27 years. So, and he also had a vet clinic as well, and a vet lab. And he was just the perfect package. However, you would think of meeting anyone in the entire country of Vietnam, that had veterinary expertise, that loved animals, that, was both Vietnamese and Western, was incredible, because he could really bridge a lot of gaps, obviously, through his experience. And as it turned out, he has, and he's led a fine team in Vietnam, and we're led by our tagline, the only cure is kindness. And that's how we try to behave, not just between ourselves, but in everyone that we deal with. So even people like the farmers are being sort of put up there on a pedestal as heroes, for giving up their bears, and we're finding that's creating a ripple effect.
How many people are involved?
Over 300 across the world.
300 people. Wow.
I believe it. We
Awesome.
started in my room in Clearwater Bay, you know, and with 4 of us, and now it's like.
How do you recruit these people?
I'm really, really proud with how the teams are recruiting local staff, because we're great believers in capacity building. So, for example, again in Vietnam and China, actually, we've got veterinary interns that we train up. Because obviously these are people that are going to be leading all these programs in these countries ultimately. You know, we have promotions through the ranks as soon as we bring people in, so that you have a bear carer, and they go up to a number 4 in charge, a 3 in charge, a 2 in charge, a bear team supervisor, a bear team manager. You know, there's plenty of scope for promotion, so that people can, you know, obviously earn higher salaries, but also get that sort of kudos, if you like, of leading the teams as well. And it works beautifully.
What's life like in China and Vietnam?
It's wonderful. It's really wonderful. You know, otherwise I wouldn't have spent so long here, you know, decades
Sure.
and decades. I always say when I got off the plane in 1985 to Hong Kong, I knew I'd come home. I loved everything about the East. I loved Hong Kong. I loved the city. I loved going next door to mainland China. I love the people, I love the food. I found food that, you know, I wasn't that bothered about food in the UK. And I found food that I was like, oh my goodness.
Do you know what? It's a good job you didn't meet me when when I was out there in the 80s. You and I would be 2 enormous fatties. The food, I've never been to a place in the world that serves food as amazing as Hong Kong. And I do get what you're saying about life in Hong Kong. I also felt a sense of being at home there. I think as soon as lockdown is lifted, me and Ira, we're gonna come out and we're gonna see you there, because we would love to come and see the operation there. How many bears do you currently have in your sanctuaries?
Well, we've rescued over 600. So we have 180. Oh goodness, in Vietnam is it 108? Oh, actually, I think it's 190 now in Vietnam, and we've got a capacity of 200, and we've got 43 in our sanctuary in Chengdu in China, but we've got another 104 bears that we've been looking after at an ex-bear bar farm, which we're hoping very, very soon to be transferring over to our sanctuary as well. So that'll bring us up to nearly 200 there as well. In China especially, we've got quite a few oldies, you know, and we have to sort of, gosh, our learning curve has really been vertical over these years in terms of obviously rescuing previously physically and psychologically damaged animals, and now into their old age as well, which is even worse, you know, because they're presenting a lot of trauma, things like, you know, arthritis as a result of being in tiny wire cages, and heart conditions as a result of the stress, of course, eye conditions as a result of banging their heads against the bars of the cage. So there's a lot of things that we've had to really step up and learn over these years.
How long do moon bears typically live for, Jill?
About 30 years. And we also have sun bears and brown bears. So sun bears as well in Vietnam, and brown bears in China as well. So we're working with all 3 species, which again have a lifespan of about 30 years or more under captivity.
I've heard that they're quite they have all their own individual characters. They're very similar to dogs. Do you have your favourites? Have you ever fallen in love with one of these beautiful stoic moon bears?
We all say we're not allowed to have favourites. That's our theme going through the foundation.
Right.
Of course we all do.
Of course you do. Of course you do, yeah.
In fact, just yesterday we celebrated Oliver's Day. So we've got this lovely programme. It's called Oliver's Army.
Saw that.
We asked people to join that. This was a brown bear that had been caged for 30 years of his life. So his entire life he'd been caged. And after we rescued him, I mean, we called him our broken bear, because he was like one of those wind-up toys that you sort of put on the floor and they can't kind of work themselves. You know, he was just so damaged. And we had him for 4 years. And everyone that stood up on the roof of his house 10 and looked over to see him pottering around in the grass, having a swim in the pool, lying amongst the clover, which he loved to do. Grown men sobbed their eyes out when they were watching him, because they were saying, what have we been doing for the last 30 years? You know, we've grown up, we've gone to university, we've raised a family, we've got a great job. You know, all that time, day in, day out, while this bear was in a barren metal cage, lying on bars, with no toys, no free access to water, even no food given to him, at regular intervals, just eating gruel, eating congee porridge. That was it. How he had the gentleness to forgive us as a species, and that's why we decided to have Oliver's Day, just to build up an army of people that could be as forgiving and as kind as Oliver, and just be a symbol, an ambassador for ending bear farming.
Have you ever been tempted to take one home to you, take one home with you to the flat?
Always. They are. You're right. They're so charismatic, and every single one is different. And I've just told you about Oliver, and he, when we first let him into his den, he just trashed it. He trashed the whole thing. He'd never seen toys or climbing platforms or hanging basket beds before. And he just systematically went through everything and tore it apart. And we would just go, you carry on there, boy. I mean, our team in both China and Vietnam could fill a book literally on the charismatic natures of these animals. They deliberately, are mischievous with each other. One of them will go running up to another one and bite him on his bum and then run away, while the other one is like, just waking up or something. And we had a bear called Jasper, which again was another one of my favourites, and he'd been caged for 15 years. And we just used to call him the peacemaker, because he would always break up fights if there was ever a fight in the enclosure. But we also called him a photo bomber, because it just seemed like whenever the media came and were trying to take pictures, Jasper would always plant himself, in the middle of the picture and just photo every single shot. But I love that bear, and he died, as many of them have died, of liver cancer, which is the most awful thing to die of, and it's clearly symptomatic of the bear farming industry.
You also run the Dr. Dog program, which rescues stray dogs in Asia, because we've got to talk about doggies. What is the number of dogs you handle each year, Jill?
We don't rescue dogs per se. We've got a few rescued dogs that we picked up when we've done the market investigations, for example. So in Chengdu, we've got the gorgeous Tojai, which is rabbit in Chinese, rescued in the Chinese New Year of the rabbit. And we've got Muppet, who just looks like a Muppet, actually like me with the hair, and rescued those two from the live animal markets, and others before that. But mainly our work in China and Vietnam is to end the dog industry, end the cat and dog trade for consumption. And it's something that I'm really, really happy to say that in China has just happened in May of this year. The government looked at the livestock list and removed dogs, and by default cats, they were never on it, so they removed dogs and cats from the livestock list and made it illegal to sell these animals for consumption now in China. So this has been decades of work, and again with local groups, again passionately working on many, many programs in collaboration with government officials to finally bring this program to an end. And I have to say, when you mentioned Dr. Dog, of course, I think Dr. Dog was one of the programs that we've had over these decades that's formed the building blocks, if you like, have come into that decision, because we've been able to bring dogs into hospitals and disabled centres and homes for the blind and the deaf and the elderly, and orphanages, etc., and just show the community, how our physical and our psychological health is benefited by being in the company of dogs and cats, companion animals.
What other animals are you involved with at Animals Asia? So we cover bears and dogs and cats and rabbits. Was there a rabbit?
Dave Neal, our fantastic animal welfare director, he's involved in the captive animal industry, and just, working with zoos in China and Vietnam to upskill their keepers and, enhance the enclosures for the animals concerned. To go out again in public education programs, to discourage people from going to circus performances, for example, and just discouraging the captivity of these species, and trying to encourage more and more rescues as well, rather than this incessant breeding and dodgy trading in animals as well.
How do you see the future of Animals Asia, Jill?
Well, I guess ultimately, we very deliberately reined in our programs in the early years, because you're right, you can step off the plane in this neck of the woods, and where do you start? It's like, it's a whole new world that's opened up. So, you know, we very deliberately said, no, we better just concentrate on the three main programs: cat and dog welfare, ending bear bar farming, and captive animal welfare. And that's pretty much what we've done. And I think, honestly, Phil, that's going to keep us very, very happily busy, you know, for the next few decades as well. People are getting animal welfare now, and leading it. You know, I just caught myself then because I sounded sort of, what's the word? Patronizing, I think. And I don't want to, because, you know, the fact is that local groups here, local people here, many of them are doing such brilliant stuff for animals. And, you know, even things like the vegan community, the plant-based community is huge now, is huge.
I'd like to talk to you now about your funding and also your patrons, and possibly now how we can raise awareness and how we can help you to actually get some funds in. Finances, I would imagine, like any business, especially, you know, in the modern age, finances are always tight, they're always difficult, it's tough. And of course, you know, having had the lockdown situation, I'm sure that you must have suffered in line with every animal charity, not only animal charities, but, well, in fact, not just charities, everything in the world has suffered. How do you acquire your funding?
Any way possible, really. I mean, we have a fine fundraising team. I have to say, I want to give them, you know, you've heard all about the Sanctuaries and our teams, but honestly, our global team are just fantastic. They really are. And they work their socks off. And no more so than this year. Absolutely no more so. As you say, this has been a tough year. And we were so worried from February, you know, because even in China, things were going through the roof. Prices everywhere were escalating. We couldn't get hold of stuff. We couldn't get hold of drugs for the bears, you know, medications for them. And we were so worried. We were, you know, we thought we were in such a bad place. And, you know, again, we just saw supporters just really turning everything around, you know, and helping us to meet our budget this year. So we've been so lucky, but we can't take anything for granted ever, because we just don't know what's going to happen next year. And of course, next year is another huge year for us, because we've got to build that sanctuary to rescue, you know, as many of those remaining 400 bears as we can in Vietnam.
We are here now to raise money for Animals Asia. I tell you, nearly every guest that I've interviewed, when I've said, who would you nominate for your favourite charity, guess who they say? Animals Asia. I'm going to shut up now, come close to the camera. I'd like you to make a real personal appeal on behalf of Animals Asia.
You've caught me on the hop here a bit, but let me just say, first of all, I do want to thank, you know, our ambassadors, of course, the amazing Peter Egan and Leslie Nichol, and of course Virginia McKenna, who's our patron as well, in the UK. They are incredible people. You know, they've been with us for many years, and they just completely get what we need, because they've all been out to the sanctuaries as well and absolutely loved what they've seen and just bonded with the bears. So, you know, bears are not easy to look after, and they're certainly not cheap to look after as well. You know, not just their food, they are hugely greedy animals like we are. And food is their consuming passion, but we do need the medicines, the drugs, to get them through their days as well, because they've been so badly compromised on bear bar farms that, you know, many of them, even most of them, are going to need medications for the rest of their lives. So, you know, this is where we need the most help. And of course, for all our other programs as well now, you know, with the cat and dog welfare, we may have it on the statutory books to, you know, that the selling of cats and dogs is illegal. But actually now we've got to work very hard on the enforcement side, which is a different thing, you know, because there's obviously a big pushback by the industry there too. So every single dollar now, you know, counts so vitally for these programs. And I just want to, you know, just if I could get on my knees now, I would. It's just because, you know, every year we seem to make enough to make ends meet, and that's not enough. It's just not enough for us to do that anymore, you know, because every year it's so nerve-wracking, and we need to just make more than that to be confident in the years ahead. And if you can become a monthly donor, that is hugely important for us to have you join us month by month, so that we can project, you know, our income as the years go on. So thank you. Go onto our website, www.animalsasia.org. Go onto our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram pages, everything. We're all over the place, and we desperately need your help. Thank you.
If you can help Animals Asia, even by making a very small monthly donation, then please do that. I'm married to someone just like you. I mean, whatever I do, I mean, I'm invisible. I don't even see Ira. I only see her for about 10 minutes each night. And that's just to say, here you are, darling, here's your dinner. She eats that and goes straight into the office for another 4 hours of doggy stuff. You're intensely involved with Animals Asia. I know you live and breathe moon bears and saving animals and all the backroom stuff that goes with it. I know you're involved in every facet. But how do you, at the end of the day, how do you chill out?
You know what, for the last, it must have been about 20 years ago, I had a really good doctor friend, still got him, John Wedderburn, and he always just said, Jill, just have 2 hours for yourself every day. Just have 2 hours. And it was the best advice I've ever got. And mine comes right at the end of the day. You know, it doesn't matter what time it is in the evening, you know, like eight, usually around 8, where you just switch off and have dinner and watch trashy TV. And I have to be honest with you, I probably don't even watch, you know, things like National Geographic or, you know, because, you know, I don't want to see a lion ripping a zebra's head off. You know, we see stuff all day.
Enough
you know?
of that, yeah. You need to do something completely different, don't you?
And I think one of the things that really carried me through, and I, you know, watched it several times, of course, is Downton Abbey, of course, with both Peter and Leslie Nichol, our ambassadors, starring in that, is the best way of just, shaking off that awful stress, you know, that you've had, and just making you ready for the next day as well.
Whatever life throws at you, you're always smiling. You've got that gorgeous smile and a lovely face, if I may say. What star sign are you? I always like to ask star sign questions. I don't know why, but I've got a thing about it.
I'm a Taurus.
May. Oh, you're Taurus. You and I are quite well suited because I'm a Cancerian crab, like Ricky Gervais, who's also a patron of yours, isn't he? Oh, good old Ricky. What are the things that scare you, Jill? Are you scared of anything at all? I mean, you're working with these bears and everything. I know you're a pretty brave lady, but
the bears don't scare me at all because we've got protocols on protocols in both sanctuaries. Gosh, what frightens me? I guess sometimes just the future. You know, just hoping that we can build our reserves, things like that. You know, to be able to really guarantee those bears' lives again in the next few decades, long after I've left this mortal coil. You know, if COVID has taught us nothing, it's that, you know, these horrible live animal markets have to close down. Is that we can't we can't keep treating animals like we're treating them now. We cannot, and it frightens me that people are not learning that lesson. You know, that there's not greater intervention.
I think it's a fact, and I hope you'll agree with it, that the younger generation today, the kids that are coming through and growing up, have a completely different perspective and are far more willing to take on exactly what you've just been mentioning. I think they're far more aware than certainly my generation ever was.
I completely agree. One of our team, Sorrel in the UK, she's got a beautiful daughter called Primrose. And Primrose went to school this week just talking about animal welfare and you know, to her friends and things. And she came back to her mum and she just said, if there's a school trip going to the zoo, I won't be going. We can stay at home and we can do something else. And I just thought that was the most beautiful thing for, I think she's 4 or 5, 4 I think she must be. Just what a beautiful thing, you know, for Little to say.
It's people like you who are setting an example. It looked like I was blowing smoke up Peter when I had his interview because we were talking about veganism and I said, oh God, you know, Peter, you've been an influence on me because I haven't eaten meat for it's actually 3 years now because I loved to eat meat. Didn't give one consideration or thought to where the product came from. It's influencers. You're what's called an influencer, I think, Jill. And all the kids are on social media. We're all living behind our WhatsApps and you know, the computer. And I guess it's what we're seeing, the examples that we're being led, the work that you've done through Animals Asia. Kids who love bears, they love animals, they're all aware of Animals Asia, but it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for people like yourself who get up in the morning and resolve to change the world. It needs to be applauded, and I don't care what people think, quite honestly. That's why I'm doing this show. I'm not working for anyone. I'm my own boss, mate. Would you describe yourself as a very disciplined person? Do you set yourself goals in life?
Yeah, I would. I am quite disciplined. Yeah, my dad always used to call me tenacious, and I think that's a good word to describe me. Yeah, I don't give up easily, for sure. There's so much to do, and you know, my dad had another great saying. for when times get really hard and you don't want to do this and that, even if you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. He just said, hit it hard and don't tell me how you can't do a thing, tell me how you can. And I've carried that all my life. And, you know, there are mornings when you think, oh, I don't want to get out of bed, I don't want to do this and that. And I just say to myself, hit it hard, and it works, you know. So I had my dad to thank for that, bless him.
We just come to this stupid little part of my show. I don't care again. It's called Doggy People Dabble. And I'm going to ask you 3 questions. If you woke up tomorrow as a 20-year-old, what would be the first 3 things you did?
Oh gosh.
If you turn the clock back. Of course, you don't have to turn it back that far, do you?
Oh, be more patient, maybe listen more. And, just look after my body better. Yeah.
Do you have any guilty pleasures at all that you can share with us on screen?
Oh gosh. So just not really guilty, but just things I've always done. So whenever I'm on an aircraft as it's taking off, I'll always have my fingers crossed to the point where the light goes on, the safety belt. You can undo your safety belt. I've done it ever since I was like 18, or just crossed my fingers on a flight.
Are you scared of flying?
I was, but I'm not now. And the other thing, that every bear on the surgery table, whether it's a health check or a surgery, I'll kiss their nose.
Well, I wouldn't rate that as a guilty pleasure. I'd say that's something amazing. Lucky bear to have you big kiss by Jill. I would nominate you, but who would you nominate as your all-time animal welfare hero?
Virginia McKenna.
I had a feeling you would say. I had a feeling you'd say that. Nearly everyone I've asked that nominates you, quite honestly. But I had a feeling that you would say that, and may I say, very well deserved indeed.
She really started so much. You know, she started this 6-year-old when she watched Born Free, and fell in love with her as an actress, and then fell in love with a woman. And then when I was in 2 minds, what shall I do shall I start an organisation? You know, way back in '98, John, my ex, just said, phone Virginia, and I did. And she said 3 words, just do it.
Well, that's the end of the show. Jill, can I say you're an unbelievable character. And I'll tell you what, I could talk to you for 3 days and 3 nights, and all I'd need is lots of black coffee in a bucket, nothing more. You're one of the most respected animal welfare heroes in the world, and I'm really proud to call you my friend. So I've just got one last request. Will you come back and talk to us again in a few weeks' time, when perhaps we're thinking it might be kind of cool if you could take us on a virtual tour of one of the sanctuaries?
Oh, I'd love to.
That would be quite a good idea, I think, so we can see people make another appeal. That's what we're about. What do you think?
Our Bear and Vet team directors, Heidi and Ryan, China and Vietnam. Yes, please bring them along as well.
Lovely, because we want to meet we want to meet your team. We want to talk to them, and I promise you, I won't embarrass them. I won't ask them silly questions. I might. So thank you so much, Jill, for joining us today, and look forward to talking to you soon. Bye. Love you so much. Love you lots. Go and get a drink now and chill out. Okay. Give my love to Hong Kong. Love you. Thanks, Jill. Well, thanks very much for watching. That's the end of our show, and I hope you enjoyed listening to the amazing Jill Robinson, MBE. What a lovely lady. Who said that we'd never get her on the show? Of course we would. Anyway, listen, please have your say. Tweet me, email me, tickle me, do whatever you like, but just please engage. The purpose is to help raise awareness of all of our guest charities, and if you can, support them with a bit of funds. That's it. So join me next time when we'll be meeting another amazing animal welfare hero. That's it. Stay safe, love your dog, and cheerio.